Tonight I'm going to share my experiences with you, and I hope you all join my journey as a person from a deaf world to a hearing world. And my journey starts when I was 5 years old, when my hearing loss progressed. It was quite mild to begin with, and the way that my mother found out I had a hearing loss was that I had a noddy clock. Remember Edith Blight and Noddy and Big Ears? The noddy clock used to tick, and my mother wrapped the noddy clock up to try and work out how many nappies could she wrap the clock up before I could no longer hear the tick. For me, it was one nappy. For everybody else, it was 7 to 10. So obviously there was a problem. She had a lot of problems actually getting me to be assessed by a GP or specialist because they thought, no, it might be an intellectual disability or just being ignorant. But eventually, yes, I did have a mild hearing loss, enough to actually miss the most components of speech. That continued to progress until I was about 8 years old. Now, at 8 years old, it was considered moderate, and I was actually given one of those, you know, those nice stainless steel hearing aids the size of a fist with a cord that looked a bit like an iPod, so it was obviously before my time. Now, with one, that was fine. Mum just made a nice little cotton pocket to put the hearing aid in. But later on, funding changed, and they realised if we had hearing in both ears, if you had bilateral loss, it was much better to have two. So where do you put these two big boxes? You don't have your ears on your backside, you don't have your ears in your pocket. So my mum, being creative, decided to buy a bra. Put two little pockets in the bra, cut a hole in for the microphone. Now, I was 8 years old. I had square breast. Not a pretty look at all. That's technology for you. By the time I was 12, or actually just before then, the behind-the-ear hearing aids were developed and actually distributed to children under the Australian Hearing Program, which I was one. Now that was great because it developed me to be a little bit more normal, but it also created a hidden handicap, meaning a lot of people didn't really realise that I was deaf, once again thinking it was an intellectual problem. By the age of 12, I was considered profoundly deaf. Hearing aids were doing a little bit for me, but most of my communication was on body language. I could feel vibrations, I could see shadows move, and lip reading. I was an advanced lip reader by 12 years of age. Now, I do not deny school was a challenge. I was in all the bottom classes. Teachers did not know how to deal with someone with a hearing loss. They tend to write on the board, how do you lip read someone's back? They tend to say, let's have dictation. How do I lip read and write at the same time? I suppose I was bullied a little bit, but there's no incident that I can remember clearly of that actually happening. But the problem was, at 12 years of age, my parents decided to move. I had to get new friends, explain why I had hearing problems, create a buddy that helped me, be my ears, you know, probably the best way to describe it. Now, this photograph is actually what I call my C-pets. All my different A's that I've used over time, I give them C names. The little round part is the actual implant. That's my platypus. The actual process of the little brown bit, that's also one of my C animals. And here is the actual cochlea. The implant part, or the was actually elect ray that goes in, or the electrodes that go into my cochlea. Now, going back to after 12 years of age, you know, I just became a little bit more of an introvert, even though my personality was more extrovert. The reason being social isolation. You tend to go out with groups, you can't hear everything people are saying. You try to be included. I had this glazed look on my face, you know, when we're in a crowd and everyone's talking. I had no idea what they were talking about. I often said yes and no to answer with a question, hoping I said yes in the right place. And a few times, my yeses put me in a real pickle, believe me. By 18 years of age, you know, I tended to go towards more creative subjects rather than academic. So I excelled in cooking. I became a chef, a diet supervisor, catering officer, and a home economist. I struggled. There was no doubt that the biggest struggle was with the telephone. Hands up everyone that has used a telephone in the past 48 hours. Almost 100% of you. Go back and just think what it would be like if you could not use a telephone. Now, I'm talking in the days before we had iPhones and SMSs and emails. The only way I could communicate was through a fax machine or have notes written for me as I passed through the restaurant. This became very problematic. I was getting dietary requirements mixed up, I was getting orders mixed up, and I realised that I had to leave that profession, and I went into a profession well and truly below my capability. I was very fortunate. I married my school heartthrob when I was 21, who I had known since I was 12 years old. He became my ears, and had been my ears for many, many years. I never really wanted to have children. I was always worried they would be born profoundly deaf, because I actually lost my hearing at 5. I knew the difficulties of that. My sister also follows my same medical history, and she also has one cochlear implant. So I just went through life working the best of my capabilities until something miraculous happened. I was invited to go to a conference down in Kiama, one of our local regions, and Professor Graham Clark and Professor Wallace were there. And they were talking about the cochlear implant program. Now, I was always in the belief we were in the developmental stages, the research stages. I was what I consider a gap, meaning I did not go to the doctor on a regular basis, except to have go to Australian Hearing, get my hearing tested. Nobody said to me that the cochlear implant was so successful. I spoke to Graham for quite some time, and he said, go and through the process, just see if you're a candidate. What did I have to lose? Over the years, I had actually collected 7 referrals. So I went off to Bill Gibson, as you know, who started the cycle of 7 tests before you can actually be accepted as a candidate. Now, one of the tests was a real mind-opener for me, where they put a very small electrode into the eardrum. For the very first time that I could remember, I could hear boom, boom, boom. That was the time when reality hit. The cochlear implant was a reality. It may work. It was not science fiction. 6 months later, I had my first implant in my right ear. Absolutely hated it to start with. I must admit the sounds I heard were there, but not clear. The first sound I heard was the sound of my husband, my children, and my sister's voice. I cried. I wasn't really sure what I was hearing, but I knew it was their voice. Then I went outside. There were aeroplanes going over. There were birds. I haven't heard birds since at least I was 5. Then all the other sounds that you take for granted, I was hearing. They were amplified. They cleared. One of the biggest things with my hearing loss, all the high pitches had gone. So to hear birds was actually a miracle for me. I believed cars were silent. Why aren't cars silent in this day and age? The first time I went to the toilet, I nearly wet myself, because the sound of a toilet is like Niagara Falls. It was just huge. But slowly and slowly, these ears just started to work, and I started to work out what sounds were from my memories. This photograph is showing one of our young candidates. Now, these young people who are getting implants from anything from 6 months do not have to go through the journey that I have. They have normal speech. They are integrated into normal school with minimal intervention, unlike me. I did have some intervention, but I wanted to be normal. So I just kind of used that for 1 hour off from school, but I never really benefited from it. So I decided I wasn't just going to sit there and gain one hearing. I was going to do something. So the first implant was 2004. 2005, I decided that I was going to learn to dance. And I did. I could hear music. It is so empowering to hold my partner back because he can't hear the music. Then I decided I was going to go to university. 2006, I became an undergraduate, a mature age student. I also decided to have my second implant. The reason being, in some ways I felt pressured. My family and my friends knew what had happened in the first implant, expected such miracles the second implant. So I was a little bit hesitant. It was really good to have a hearing aid. You can go to the beach with a cheap hearing aid rather than taking an expensive cochlear implant with you. But what made my decision is the hearing aid quite often went flat, or battery power went flat, and I never knew. The cochlear implant was taking over. So that's when I decided, yes, I will go for a second implant. So that was in 2006. Now, the benefits of second implant was that I could hear directions. I'm not forever looking around to find out where people are speaking. I can have an audience, and generally I can find out who's talking to me and converse back, whereas before that was almost impossible. The other thing that I found, there become a few challenges in my life with cochlear implants. Not all open glory. One of the things is the new implants have little lights on them so that when a child actually has a flat battery, the teacher knows. My audiologist still cannot work out how to turn those lights off. And unfortunately, I love the theatre, I love going to the orchestra, and all of a sudden, my cochlear implants go flat and the lights start flashing. I look like an alien. To the extent that just recently I was at theatre and someone tapped my shoulder. "Excuse me, your ears are flashing." There is a sad note to this. Because I did so much, I had tried to cram my whole life in 8 years. My husband found it very, very difficult. I'm a new person. He just couldn't cope with what was going on. So we decided to part ways after 29 years of marriage and 35 years of having a good friend. It just is. So my life is about to start another chapter. This photograph reminds me of a very dear friend who has a farm at Ballina. She's in her 70s, had a first cochlear implant, and she has actually jumped, heaps and bounds like me. But one of the things she always said was, "I really miss hearing the nature calls on my farm. I miss having a cup of tea with my husband on the veranda and having a conversation with him first thing in the morning." Now she can. She appreciates every moment that she can have with her husband and hear every word. This is another photo of another candidate, one of our ladies. She's in her mid-20s. Now, if I had my hearing actually assessed and a cochlear implant in my 20s, my life would be so much different. I wouldn't feel like my potential is in a box or was in a box with a padlock on. I could actually go out and do the things I'm doing now. There's a lot of things that change after a cochlear implant, whether it's your personality, your going from an introvert to extrovert, getting out of that box of social isolation. It's a whole new world. The best way to describe it, you've gone from a black and white world to a world which is full of colour and life and activity. But it's something that's not for everybody. My sister, unfortunately, has not found the whole process as successful as I have. One of the reasons may be because her personality is not as bubbly and positive as mine. I don't know. Or it could be a medical reason. It is an individual decision. You should not be pressured to have the cochlear implant because of what other people tell you. My story is inspirational because it has been a success. I have done a lot of things, and I know that my personal life and my professional life will only get better in time. I still ask people, what is that sound? There is so many sounds out there, I have no idea what they are. My memory is quite limited in what I can remember, but then again, things come up that I do remember, which I have no idea how I can. Now, I'd just like to read you a little script that I put on Facebook last year. I was feeling a little bit down, it was late at night. There's a site called the Cochlear Experience, and it's for people of cochlear implants from any manufacturer in the world. So what I wrote is, what do I hear now? After 40 years of near silence and near phone communication, I can hear a cat walking on a slate floor. I can hear the birds and the bees, and I can hear the snap, crackle, pop of my breakfast. But seriously, I have put 40 missed years of opportunities into 7 short years since my first cochlear implant and since my second cochlear implant 5 years ago, remembering this was written last year. I have gone to uni and graduated after I commenced uni after my first cochlear implant. I am now studying for my Masters at Wollongong University. I attained a professional position only 1 week after graduation. My position at this moment requires a high usage of phone, mobiles and landline. I have learnt to dance, and I can finally socialise with confidence. So what more can I say, except that my cochlear implants are priceless. Thank you.